Sounds great. Do you want to go ahead?
Okay. Yeah, so we're live. So my name's Carolyn Kent.
I'm Grayson Griffiths.
I'm Annie Cobble.
And I'm Christy Wanshoff.
Okay, so we're on week 11, so we are going over our interviews that we did. So let me pull it up here. So I can get started first if you guys want. So I interviewed a really great place. They're called the Child Crisis Center of Arizona. And so the first question, the lady I talked to said she was led to get involved with the Child Crisis Center because she was just looking for somewhere to start volunteering just occasionally, and she just fell in love with what they're doing there and with the kids, and now she's been there 15 years and she's not a volunteer anymore. She runs a lot of the programs they have. So that's what led her there. So what do you see are the most prevalent problems for families here in the community? So she said that, well, I guess I'll give a little background on what the Child Crisis Center is. So they do a few things. They're kind of, well, I guess to answer the question, one of the big problems in the community here in Mesa, in the Phoenix area, are there's a huge shortage of foster homes. And so these kids have nowhere to go. And so the Child Crisis Center is part shelter and then part prevention services. So they have a bunch of kids at birth up until teenagers that are living there, and they provide medical care. They address their developmental delays. They have schooling for them. They feed them. They provide them with like all their basic needs. So all the kids that are going there are they're either pulled out of the home by CPS, or parents can just drop their kids off if they feel like, I'm not in a good place, I need my kids to be somewhere safe until I can pull myself together or whatever. So all the kids that are there are coming out of pretty rough situations. So they're kids can stay there indefinitely, I mean, as long as they need, but they are trying to place them in with foster homes. So that's one big problem that the community has. And then another problem is just the lack of funding for prevention services. Back when the recession hit in 2009, they cut a lot of that funding. And now that we're out of that, at least a little bit, funding hasn't been restored. So that has made things difficult for the community too. And they've said that CPS is just super, super busy and super overrun with abuse and neglect cases because, and it's gotten a lot worse since 2009 because those prevention services aren't as prevalent and people don't know about them as much. They don't know that there are all these resources out there that can help strengthen their family. So then how does the Child Crisis Center help children and families locally? So I guess I answered that a little bit. So it's, they have a lot of prevention services. So they have parent education, and it's all free. Anyone can go. So let me look at my paper again. Yeah, so they have parent education. They have their emergency shelter for kids. They advocate for the needs of families and children. They support parents and caregivers and children when they're struggling. So they're a really awesome organization. So do you feel your organization is child or family focused? They help both. They say that the needs of the children come first. So I'd say first they focus on the children and making sure they're okay, making sure they're getting everything that they need, and then they work on the family and they work on educating them and helping them and strengthening them. So they really do address both. And then I asked her how the community can contribute and how they can help out the Child Crisis Center. And she said getting volunteers is kind of tough for them. And so she said that that's a big way that the community can contribute is by volunteering. But she said that with their volunteers, that they need to commit to at least a year, because these kids have come out of such unstable environments and they've come out of rough circumstances. They really like the volunteers to consistently be there for a year, because these kids have had enough people coming in and out of their lives and they've had enough change. So they want them to not just have someone come by once and they get attached to them and they leave. They said for attachment purposes, they have to be there at least a year. So they said that that's one thing that's really helpful. And then I asked also how many kids on average stay there per year. And they said that they have about 500 kids coming in and staying each year. So it fluctuates. They said on average they have 70 to 80 kids there a day, and most of them are there for a while, but their placement rate into foster homes and even getting these kids adopted is super, super high. So that's good. So that's what I had.
I'll go next if that's okay. I'm getting worried about the time. So I interviewed a little organization in our community called Cornerstone, and I have heard, we haven't lived here that long, so I'm not too familiar, and it's kind of a tiny town. So I'd heard of them, but just of their donation center. But what I didn't realize is that they are a lot more than just a donation center. So just to back up a little bit, I interviewed the founder of Cornerstone, and it's sort of a faith-based program. It's not really associated or affiliated with a specific church, but it's definitely faith-based. And because I live in Texas, most everyone goes to church. There's a lot of faith-based activities that happen here in our area. So she's just a mom, and just a mom. Did I just say that? Anyway, her oldest daughter was entering kindergarten, and she noticed that the food pantry was constantly low on food, and she was worried about what the other moms were doing in order to clothe their kids and get them ready to go back to school. And so she thought, what can I do about that? And she started checking into organizations in other cities that surround our city, our town. And she visited a Cornerstone in Fort Worth, which was similar to what they've now patterned this one around, and saw that they not only have a donation center. Well, I'll go down the list a little bit, but there's a lot of services that they provide that are sort of intervention for children and their families. And so she applied for not-for-profit, and now it's this fabulous thing in my tiny town. And when talking to her was so inspirational, and the difference that they're making in lives and families in our community are pretty incredible. So when I asked her about the prevalent problems in our area, it was really interesting because she said that they sort of cycle. She said that 2 years ago, it was divorce, high divorce. There were just men leaving women, just like abandoning them, taking all their money, just leaving them with their kids and all the debt and house payment, and moms kind of not having a job and not knowing what to do. And so they helped a lot with that. Another year, there were a lot of single moms that got laid off, so they didn't have any income. They didn't know how to care for their children. And right now, the current problem is that rents in our area are skyrocketing. And so people that could afford their housing before are now not able to. And so it's just sort of that transition. How do I get back on my feet? And because our school district is one that once you're deemed homeless, they won't kick your child out. So even if you go like to a neighboring city to live with family or whatever, you can still go to this home school district. And so that way there's more consistency for the kids. And so they're servicing those families to try and help them be able to stay in our area so that the children will have, you know, sort of that consistent opportunity to go to the school that they want to. So the things that Cornerstone provides are they have this donation center, which is sort of a Desert Industries or a Goodwill, if you will. People donate and then they recycle it and clean it up and get it, and then they sell it in a store. They provide financial support for families. They also do case management. They'll sit down with a family. Normally it's one-on-one and sort of assess what the family's needs are. You know, okay, do they need food? Do they need money? Do they need skills? There's a lot of education that goes on. They teach families how to budget and how to, you know, stop living in the red, how to, they teach them job skills and interviewing skills. They help them learn how to dress for success. They do GED tutoring. They do ESL. They also do job placement, and they also have a transitional house. It's just one house. The house is one family. They just have one right now, and a family can live there for up to a year while they're getting on their feet. So it's really an all-encompassing program, and it's pretty incredible. I asked her how the families find her, or how she finds the families, and she said that families pretty much find her. They're well known enough in the community, and I know that they don't necessarily do that in our church, but in other churches, I guess about once a year they go in and do like a presentation so that people know that they're available. There's a lot of community network, and then schools know about them too. So they'll give referrals, and they're not allowed to share names because of privacy issues. So they'll just tell the family, hey, here's Cornerstone, here's the name and number, call them, they'll help you. And so that helps a lot. Matter of fact, one thing that I love that they do is, it always breaks my heart when children don't have money for lunch at school. And so schools can actually call Cornerstone and they'll say, hey, we've got this child, they haven't had money in their account for 3 days, and Cornerstone will actually just go put money in their lunch account to cover their lunch. So it's really all encompassing. They just do a lot of things to meet the needs of the families in our community that are struggling. Every year they have a huge back to school bash and carnival. Every child that needs help gets new schools or new shoes and gets spirit wear and school supplies to start the year. And then every Christmas they have what's called a Cornerstone Christmas, where the families are allowed to come into the donation center and do some shopping, and a lot of people have donated things, so they're able to provide Christmas for their families. When asked if the organization is child or family focused, I think it's both. I mean, the family focus though is prevalent. When she talked a lot about how when families come in, they're beaten down, you know, they're discouraged, they're feeling like they can't get back, like they're just wondering how they're going to put one foot in front of the other. Matter of fact, on their website, they have an interview with one lady who was helped by Cornerstone, and she said, you know, when she entered, she really didn't have a reason to get up in the morning. She didn't know how to go from, you know, how to put one foot in front of the other anymore. She had her son, and that was the only reason she kept going, because she really felt like she was in quicksand and there was no way out. And now she works there, and she is back on her feet and doing so much better. But so she talked a lot about the founder, Jennifer. She talked about just how it's about trying to maintain dignity and developing a bond with those people, you know, meeting one-on-one, helping those people to recognize they're valued and important, and feel like that then as an organization, they kind of join their team, like, you know, we're team family and we're going to help you, and we're going to do this and this and this in order to help you get back on your feet, and to help them become, again, a positive contributor to the economy and to our little town. And the great thing is that then those families are taking those skills that they've learned, because they've learned this, you know, long laundry list of skills, and then they're teaching it to their own children. And so hopefully then can pay it forward at some point. I was interested to know that it's fully privately funded. There's no state agencies or government agencies that assist at all. It's all private. And when I asked about like what's needed the most. What do you find that people that come to you need the most? And she said, all of it. She said, financial assistance isn't the root of the problem. It's generally just a symptom. A lot of times they just don't have the budgeting skills, and they don't have an adequate job. So they don't even have, it's like playing a game without all the pieces. Like they're just trying to play this game and trying to figure it out, but they don't have all the pieces. They don't have the instructions. They don't know how to do it. And so a lot of it is just, educating and empowering that family and helping them to become functional again to be successful. So I was super inspired. I work with the Young Widow Board. I'm like, hey, I've got these 25 girls. We're together every Wednesday. How can we help? And so we're going to start going there once a month to help them at the donation center. But it's awesome. It's great that organizations like this are out there.
That's awesome. I'll go next really fast. So I just decided I work at a credit union, and my dad's the CEO, and he recently started having a program called the Student Run Program, and it's where employees from my work go into the schools and set it up, and they interview kids, even in elementary, as young as kindergarten, and they start like a little credit union at lunch. And kids can go up and start an account, and they can deposit as low as a penny just to have money in there. And it helps the kids at lunch who aren't working get excited. They get a piece of candy when they, deposit money in. And it helps the workers work with money management and organization as young as kindergarten. And I thought it was awesome, so I asked my dad a little bit more about it because I don't work for the Student Run. He has other employees do that. And so I asked him why he got involved, and he said that Atomic has 21 different schools operating the Student Run, and he said, I knew that with the cooperation of school districts, we could provide hands-on learning experience with concentration on the importance of saving habits and money-making initiatives and giving back to the community by financial education for the youth, because my school district and high school and all that, they don't really offer money management classes, and a lot of students do struggle. And let's see, I'll go to the second question. So the most prevalent problems families in my community are, it's probably the heroin epidemic, and it has affected nearly every family in some form that we all know, aside from the drug problems. In rural Appalachia, the lack of high-paying jobs or the need for skilled workers creates financial problems in the home, and the rising cost of healthcare far exceeds the average person's annual salary. So those fortunate enough to work and be provided healthcare insurance sees the significant portion of their paycheck go towards premiums and deductibles, and it's nearly impossible to get ahead. And that really makes the children in the home struggle as well for school and like lunch money and things like that. And I asked, how does the Student Run help families and children locally? And he said that it's a long-term initiative that will help today's children grow into better informed adults when it comes to saving money. And he said, we have heard stories of parents being inspired by their kids saving money for laptops or bicycles, and it makes them want to start, better budgeting and saving their money. And I said, do you feel like it's family focused or child focused or, And he said it's family focused, and he said we believe the apple doesn't fall far from the tree, meaning if we have good employees, we would love to hire their children, and they're more likely to be successful and help the credit union and that internal family grow as well. And so the credit union also has a small loan program, and it's available to those members who cannot obtain a traditional loan. And that means that we believe that providing small dollar loans to those members who will create loyalty as we meet their financial needs. And with many people living paycheck to paycheck or Social Security income or living under government assistance or some other form, and they didn't have a way to have money living paycheck to paycheck, we offer small loans as low as $100 without the requirement of underwriting standards. And if you could direct deposit and you've been a member for at least 6 months, you qualify for a small dollar loan. And this has helped close to 6,000 members, which is local in Southern Ohio. And that's a lot of people. So he says, I asked from the reading, do you believe community economics, specifically unemployment, is related to how children in the family are socialized? And he said yes. And he said the southern counties of Ohio, in which the credit union operates, has the highest percentage of unemployment in the state of Ohio year over year, alongside counties in our bordering state, which is West Virginia and Kentucky. And socialization tends to be more clannish in our area, and kids and family tend to interact among themselves or close immediate family members due to fear of not being accepted, due to financial circumstances, or the fact that they just don't have enough gas money to get to social events in town or in another state. And I said, what impact would you like the credit union, the student-run credit union, to have on kids in your community? And he said, I hope the student-run credit union participants grow up to be financially responsible adults and improve the community in which they live to help their future families. So that's like just a little recap of what I did.
That's really cool. I like the idea of getting kids started early to teach them financial things, because I think a lot of people don't know that these days. So that's cool. Okay, I'll just be really quick. So I interviewed a lady who worked for an organization called the Grant Avenue Street Reach. And it's just an organization that helps out families in need, provide clothing, food, supplies for school, Christmas gifts, just different things like that. And so I asked the lady what got her involved in the first place, and she said first it was just wanting to make a difference in the community and making a difference in families, because she saw families struggling, and she wanted to find a way to help. And so she started getting involved with this organization, and has just continued to work with it, I think for, she said, a couple of years. So she's been with it for a while.
Yeah, I'm going mobile.
Okay.
So she had a shop across here.
Okay, so when I asked him what the most prevalent problems for families were in the community, she talked a lot about how rent was too high, and how families just can't afford the housing. And so a lot of them are homeless because they can't afford to live anywhere. And then another thing that she brought up, which I thought was surprising, she's not a member of the church or anything. She's just a lady who runs the organization. My aunt knows her really well. And she talked about fathers not being in the homes to give support. And I thought that was an interesting thing to bring up. She just talked about how that's a prevalent thing that they see, is that it's mothers and children coming in, and they rarely see fathers in the homes. And then another thing she talked about, which I think Grayson kind of brought up, was the drugs, and especially heroin was causing a problem in these families. And then when I asked her, how does Grant Avenue Street Reach help children and families locally? She talked about how they provide diapers for the little children whose families can't afford it. They provide clothing. They clothe children and their parents. They make sure that when children and parents come in, that they have food to take home, so that way they can eat that night, because they run through the day, but they don't always work at dinner time. And so they make sure that they have food to take home, so that they are fed. They make sure that the kids are fed at the soup kitchen. They give them toys and books because they're so traumatized and they don't have anything to play with or anything to do. And she talked about how some families she's seen come in, she talked about a kid that came in with all his belongings on his back, tied in a little grocery sack. She talked about mothers who come in, who have who they bring grocery bags and they'll stuff them with toilet paper while they're at the soup kitchen, and they have to use that as diapers because they can't afford diapers. So when they see that, they make sure that they give diapers to these families because they just don't have anything. When I asked her if she felt that the organization was child or family focused, she said that it was more family focused, because they help the families fulfill basic needs so that the parents can be parents, and not have to worry or stress so much about just giving the kids the simple things that they need. And then one of the questions I asked her was how helping families and children with their basic needs helps build a stronger community. And she talked about how when they provide parents with the things that they need, they're able to be there emotionally for their children. And that emotional support is what makes the difference in the communities. And then one thing that I liked that she said that she gives them a chance to be a family. She makes sure that the kids aren't just taken away from their parents right away, that they are able to stay with their parents and avoid going into foster care or adoption if they feel that that is a good thing for them. And then the last thing I asked was that if she could tell people one thing to help them understand what families need and to know what they can do to help the families, she said that the people that they help are struggling and it's not always their fault. And so what she said was, find a way to help instead of a way to judge. And I really liked that, we may not be able to do a whole lot because of schedules or whatever is going on in our lives, but rather than judge, we can find a way to help and encourage them and uplift them. So yeah, that was a quick overview of my interview, but that's it.
Awesome, thanks guys. I guess I'll just briefly summarize. So we all talked about different organizations that are geared to help children or families, or some of them help both. And it sounds like the organizations we found help people, children and families, for everything from just meeting their basic needs, from giving them food and diapers and, health care and whatever, to more prevention services, and teaching and training parents to help them get back on their feet and help them to make some changes in their lives and in their families' lives. I'm sure, we all just interviewed one place in our communities, but I'm sure each of our communities has several different places like this that are geared towards helping families and helping children. Yeah, one thing that a lot of these places had in common was there wasn't a whole lot of federal funding going towards it. These are just locally run places. Yeah, I don't really know what else to say about all of it. I feel like that's what they all had in common. They're all there to strengthen children and strengthen families, and they're all making an impact in the community, and they're all helping. So yeah. Does anyone else have anything they want to add? No? Okay. Well, I will end our broadcast then.